I'm going to take this from a slightly different perspective today. I'm going to talk to you about change, and I'm going to speak to you about people, which are two things that we've touched on today, but we haven't really gotten into details. This is who I am. Normally, this is longer than I've already spent on this slide in most of the presentations that I do. I point out to anybody who wants information about me, just type in any browser, danto.info, and you'll find out more than my grandmother even cares to hear about. But I do want to stay on this just for a second, because I do want you to understand my perspective and what I share with you, because I'm not really a journalist, but I did spend a good 10 years at Financial News Network before CNBC bought them. And building Mike Bloomberg's TV and radio stations. And I was one of the top 10 business travel bloggers 2 years ago. USA Today's readers voted me that. I was 10, but I made the list, so I thought that's cool. And I don't really understand academia at all, but I did build NYU's first TV and media services department, crossing public rights of way with microwave. So I've had my stint in academia. I know you only really look like one organization from the outside. And if I had to tell you what I did right now, I was an end user. This is my 38th year in the industry, trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. So that never ends, by the way. Right now, the best way to describe it is the last 5 years I worked for these guys, Dimension Data. This one I'm not leaving up very long. Dimension Data is an ICT services organization, information, communication, and technology. So I've become a techie nerd. The best way to describe for you what I do is I'm a collaboration consultant. I'm the guy universities like this hire so that your Skype calls don't fail and you don't get scratchy things and you can hear people. So that's what I do for a living. So I have some questions. Near the end of the day, everybody's getting really tired. I was falling asleep. Everybody, come on, you got to get with me. I want to ask you some questions about work. Everybody with me? Yes. Okay. Really simple stuff. Is this guy working? Yes, no, yeah. Is he working? Yes. Okay, consensus on that is yes. Keep me honest, Jim. Okay. She working? Yes. You've seen this before, haven't you? What about this guy? He was in the airport on my way here. Yes. Totally working. Totally working. This gentleman? Is he working? Yes. He's in his office. Right. What about them? Coffee shop? Millennials? They working? Yes. Soccer mom, soccer dad, they working? Yes. Okay, those are the right answers. Our definition of work needs to change. Change. I go to CES every year. I'm now an industry analyst. It's one of the most fun things I do. It's busy, it's crazy, it's tiring. And this is not last January. This is 2 Januaries ago, 2015. This is a panel of some esteemed colleagues of mine, John Chambers of Cisco, Warner Struth, Neil Schmidt. And they made a point that has stuck with me as you're kidding? To this day, and if you know nothing here, remember nothing else from what I speak about today, remember this one point. John Chambers said it, and he said it a few times, you can look it up. If you look at the Fortune 100 company list today, 10 years from now, 40% of those firms won't just not be on the list, they won't be in existence. In 10 years. And think about that. Has change ever been that rapid and that constant and that fast in the history of our culture before? And it's true. You know, the largest temporary lodging organization in the world doesn't own any properties. The largest transportation firm in the world doesn't own any cars. Would you want to own a record store nowadays? It was Tower Records. I used to go there. It was cool. The world is changing very, very fast. And the difference between how it changed, when the Model T came out and, made horses obsolete, is that you can't wait for trends now. Because if you've waited for a trend, it's too late. If you're not actively changing the way you do business in today's society, if you're not looking at your even perfect organization and saying, everything's great, it's terrific, we're making money, everything's fabulous, if you're not looking at it and saying, okay, now what do we need to do next? Some guy down the block in his garage is. And you have to think about it in terms of change. The technology that we're using, and I told you I was a techie nerd, the technology that we're using now allows what we've always asked for. It's not perfect, but it's really close. Any content, any material, anywhere, anytime. A lot of these pictures I just pulled off the internet manufacturers, but not that one. That one on the left, if you can take a look at it, is actually a laptop, my iPad a few years ago. I was at an airport, I had to be on a call, couldn't be in the office, took the video call from the airport. Any. That's reality. How many people use FaceTime all the time? Video calls on their phones, whatever product you use. So some people using video. On the plane on the way here the other day, I came in on Sunday, a young lady was sitting 2 seats away from me, was on a FaceTime call with her boyfriend throughout the whole boarding. Finally, the flight attendant had to rip it out of her ears when they were taking off. This is the culture that exists today. And organizations need to understand that this is the culture for the future. And if they don't change, they're going to be obsolete. It's an interesting concept. It's one of the concepts that my firm calls Workspaces for Tomorrow, but that's not the only name. You can look this up under the term smarter working, or activity-based working, or any one of a number of other terms. But if you think about it, work is what you do. It's not where you go. I work for a great company. I showed you their name before. I'm not worried about being here at this conference. I'm working right now. I know I'm working because if I got an email that I needed to break away, well, not during when I present, but you get it, I would do it. I don't hesitate taking my kids to school and being with them at their plays or their sporting events. Because if I get that email at 8 o'clock at night from my colleague in Hong Kong, I'm going to answer it. And maybe I won't go down to my desk, I won't actually work, but I'm available. I'm available all the time. Therefore, I'm no longer judged by how many hours I put in. I'm judged by my work product, which is an interesting way of collaborating. The tenets of this, there are 4 of them. This is about a 2-hour presentation that I'm going to completely not give you guys, but I want to give you the highlights because it's very important. These are the 4 things you need to remember about being ready for Workspaces for Tomorrow. And that's really green. I'm sorry, I apologize. Behavior. Everybody remember when Marissa Meyer said that people shouldn't work from home, they all have to come into the office at Yahoo when she took over? How's that working out for her? We have to eliminate the stigmas about remote working. If you're looking for organizations where to have a career, and one of the things they tell you is you have to be there every day, all the time, look for some other place. Because that's not the way organizations work nowadays. And we had one of our other earlier presenters from Newsy, great points about whether or not she'd let somebody go to Chicago. But what if your colleague is in New Delhi or in Paris? Or you want to hire somebody and they're in LA or in San Jose or in Dallas. We have to be able to work with those people. It can't just be if you can't get to my office, you can't be part of our firm. That's history. Environment. An environment's harder than it looks. It's not just what you've seen in websites that open offices and big banquettes and everybody sitting so close to each other that they can't hear. You need private spaces. You need sound treatment. If I'm sitting this close to somebody in a desk and we're both wearing headphones and trying to be on calls, we'll kill each other. It doesn't work that way. You have to be able to pipe sound in. Beautiful white noise, or white noise with beautiful sound on top of it, like water falling. There are a number of companies that are working on technologies like that so that you'll be able to work in that environment. Meetings. We have to think about meetings now. We're not doing video conferences, we're not doing Skype calls, we're not doing audio conferences. We're meeting with people, we're connecting. And if I happen to be at the airport, no part of that meeting can be something that I can't participate in just because I'm not in the building. I need to see your faces as if I was in the room. I need to hear your sound as if I was in the room. I need to see your slides. I need to see the whiteboard or the wall you're writing on. We have to build spaces that allow that kind of collaboration. And finally, the culture of collaboration. This is one bit of consulting advice that I usually charge for that I'll give you for free. There is no right answer. There is no one firm's product that meets it. It has to be a blend. It has to be a menu. When you get this right, the benefits of Workspaces for Tomorrow are unbelievable. People work longer and harder. They're more productive. And they feel better about it. And they spend more time with family. And this gets money back to companies that you work for because you're no longer buying big offices and desks and dense routers and air conditioning and heating and network ports because people have that in their home offices. And people prefer to work for companies like this. They don't quit as often. And we used to sell video conferencing in the technology market by saying, if you buy video conferencing, you'll never have to take that trip to London. Yeah, if you're going to London next week, you're going to London next week. That's the reality. Everybody's going to London if they're going to London. But I live in New Jersey now, and I don't go to Manhattan anymore. Twice a day, there and back, 10 times a week, 50 weeks a year. I don't have to do that anymore. I'll travel here, Columbia, because this is people I want to meet, or I'll travel to a client's office, or I'll meet a client in Manhattan. But that daily grind to get to where I need to go, I'm not spending that money. I'm not losing that time. I'm not wasting those carbon emissions. It's a win-win-win across the board. And my company's not paying for office space for me to do it. So we have to compare yesterday's belief to today and tomorrow's reality. And I don't typically make fun of people, but this is an exception. And I'm not making fun of him. Google CFO, retired, I think it was last year, made the point that every Googler needs to be in the office because something magical happens in the office. People bump into each other in the hallways, and these amazing moments happen that would never happen if people were allowed to work remotely. And I get that. And ironically, he took early retirement because he was richer than a human being, but he took early retirement because he wasn't spending enough time with family. And my answer to that is, since when is the only important thing you do interacting with the people that can get to the same property you do? What about interacting with Paris and New Delhi and Orlando and Dallas? How do you make those moments? We don't work in the same city, in the same country, much less the same building with our colleagues anymore. If we can't duplicate that using some of these tools, Yammer, Redbooth, Jive, for intercompany communications, Facebook, I'm Facebook friends with a lot of my work colleagues. So I can do video with them, I can do instant messaging with them, I see what's going on our bulletin boards intercompany, but I also see my colleagues' 5-year-old daughters sitting next to a hockey player with her teeth out and he's hugging her. And so when he comes into the office the next day and I see his presence, I say, hey Scott, that picture of your daughter was really cute last night. So we have those water cooler moments, we're just using tools for them. Changes the dynamic, it makes the world a lot smaller. And one of the things we technology people do, is we focus on technology. We make this huge mistake. We want a huge honking spreadsheet. I want the product from brand A, I want the product from brand E, which one's cheaper, which one's easier to install, which one's easier to manage. And we try and make this, we're gonna pick the right thing, the right technology, the right support piece for our typical user. And that's where it goes wrong. Because there's no typical user. Technology is an outcome. Collaboration is an outcome. Say that right the second time. It's not a technology. You can't buy collaboration. You can't put a process in for collaboration. It has nothing to do with what you do. It has to do with what you want to achieve. Effective business collaboration is when people can work productively without borders or boundaries. And business can happen easily. You press a button, something happens. You send a note, you get the answer. Your internal and external customers get what they need. That's when you've achieved effective collaboration. It's an outcome. I've had a lot of clients angry with me over that because they wanted to know where they could send the purchase order. And it's a tough conversation. I can't win. We all have different roles. Okay, if you're going to be a barista, you got to go to Starbucks. I get that. But at all other organizations, people have different jobs, different functions, different internal, external exposure, different work styles, and you have to build a tool set that supports all of them. You can't do it any other way. And people have to be at the center of this. You can't tell an organization's culture, here's the new tool, that's what we decided to buy, here's your training materials, go use it, collaborate next week, thanks very much, we're going, it's Miller time. It doesn't work that way. You have to ask, what's your problem? What are your pain points? What's your particular part of the business? What do you need to do better? What outcome are you looking for? And then when you get them talking, after they vented, after they're really filling you in on this, you turn them into champions. You say, you know what? We're gonna give you what you're asking for. We're gonna give you some tools. We're gonna let you pick. You pick the marketing message so we know we're getting something that'll resonate with everybody. And then you go out and tell people to start using it. Tell them how good it is. Tell them you invented it. Starting with people works. You have to avoid stereotypes. Anybody have kids or were a kid? Remember the book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, If You Give a Moose a Muffin? Remember that? Funny thing we just discovered. We all used to think that soft phones were the future. We'd all be wearing our headsets, we'd be using these soft clients in office buildings. Funny thing is, if you give a millennial a hard phone, they think they've got a job. They think you like them. They want to stay. We're not moving to soft phones so fast. This goes back to what I said before about menus. It's a blend. some video devices, some mobile clients, some soft phones, some hard phones. The right answer has to be find the blend in your organization, what people need, supply that blend of technology tools, and you can create effective collaboration. There are multiple technologies. This is another 60 slides that I'm representing with this one up on the screen right now. We collaborate from our desktops. I always like looking at how many Macs there are when I look over here, all the little apples. I can't use one. I know how to use them, but I can't. I still use a PC. It's my preference. How do you collaborate from your desktop? What are the tools? What are the instant message? What are the chats? How do you share your desktop? Mobility, how do you do all of that, but when you're not at your PC? How do you do it from an airport? How do you do it from your kid's soccer game or the World Series that I was at last year? How do you do it from rooms? Here's a perfect example of a room. Do we really need to build rooms like this anymore in typical organizations? Maybe 10%, 15%. Nowadays, you can buy this kind of technology for smaller conference rooms in a catalog, drop it in, it gets installed in an hour, not weeks. We're changing the way we do things. You don't even have to buy it anymore. I go to organizations and I'll take all their rooms and I'll write them a check. I'll say, here's $1 million. I now own all of your rooms. And I'll buy you new ones. And then you'll pay me per person per user. It's that as a service you guys have all heard about, the consumption model. That's the way a lot of this is going. And then a lot of it's becoming virtual. You no longer need to buy the device that does one thing. You can buy virtual devices. Run it up on a set of processors in the cloud. Who talked about Slack before? I know we talked about it. You guys are Slack users? This is a category of collaboration that I wanted to include just at the end to talk about. There are people who are calling this virtual persistent rooms or Workstream collaboration, WCC. There are a number of providers of it right now. You're looking at Cisco Spark up here, which you're going to hear a lot more about over the next few months and years. You can think of Cisco Spark as a Slack that hasn't been breached twice. That's actually encrypted. And it's not just something a startup would use or an under 100 person company would use, but a major Fortune 100 company would use. So you're going to see more and more of that sharing platform. So this is really the last slide that I have. This comes from a workshop that I provide for a lot of my clients when I'm talking to end users and trying to draw them in. And when we talk about collaboration in a Workspaces for Tomorrow environment, we're talking about 4 key points. In order for it to be effective collaboration, you need to communicate. You need to communicate about what outcome you're looking for. You need to make agreements about how you're going to achieve that outcome. And you need to detail action items. An old boss of mine used to say, no meetings without action items. It's a good thing to keep in the back of your mind. Never have a meeting unless at the result, somebody's got actions. But my point is, you don't have to be there for it anymore. All of that can happen from wherever you happen to be. And that's the change that's coming fast and that organizations are going to need to learn about. Because if they don't, they're going to be the next ones Ubered. So hopefully I got us back a little bit on time. Questions?
Questions? Thoughts? Hang on, Carla, come on.
I love so much of what you're describing, but for a legacy organization, I'm from the Wall Street Journal, and for a legacy organization that is very large, how do you get from where we are to what you're talking about? Because the small changes that we've made have sometimes resulted in low employee morale, challenges around that of people really feeling like they still need to be face-to-face in a room like this, because there is great value to being in this room, right? So how do you find the sweet spot between both of those things?
There are a few methods and methodologies that work to solve that problem. One of them is you have to start with people. You can't make an assumption what individual employees or any type of team wants. And you can't listen to the people who are in charge of the technology to have them tell you they know what they want, don't talk to them. I do this with a number of organizations where I'll meet with an organization's technology group, and they'll give us all the information, they'll answer questions in a room format, and we'll ask them to sit on the sides, we'll bring in the end users, and they'll give completely different answers to the same questions. So part of it is start with people, listen to people, work it based on outcomes. Part of it is also, you don't have to do it all at once. figure out the 2, 3, 4, 5-year plan, figure out where you want to go to, have your strategy, then start with the low-hanging fruit. And you can build to where you need to go. But like I said, if you're not, somebody else will.